What's up with you, Andy? How you used to be one of us.
Hey, this is Andy Levy, co-host of The Daily Beast's The New Abnormal podcast. Just a heads up before we begin here, there was an unfortunate hardware issue on this recording, so if David's sound is a little less rich and a little noisier than normal, that's on the equipment. As ever, Dave and Jeb are completely blameless. At least this is according to Jeb, who told me to say this. So my guess is that Dave is completely blameless, but maybe not so much Jeb. Anyway, enjoy the show.
You know what time of year it is? It's Christmas time. I gotta tell you something real about Christmas. Fuck you if you don't like Christmas. Fuck you if you don't like Christmas. Yeah, that's right. It's not even about Jesus. It's about the holiday. You gotta respect the holiday.
Broadcasting from the beautiful Uncanny Valley, it's Christmastown with Dave and Jeb, your source for highlights and analysis of the films of the Hallmark Network, movies made for the gentlest of people. I am Jeb Lund, a person who invited someone he met on the internet to meet his entire family on the same day, and joining me is the coroner who's going to identify which meats we used to be, David Roth. Merry Christmas, man. Dave.
Merry Christmas, Jeb. People don't know. I'm going to take everybody behind the scenes a little bit. We're recording this in a slight bit of a time crunch. Now, that intro that Jeb does, I know it sounds effortless in every one of these that you hear. It's not always the first take. Sometimes it's hard. Jeb stepped up to the mic and hit this one out of the damn park. Congratulations to you, man. That's clutch.
Thank you. So I have two notes for this movie before we get into it. One I thought you should know of up top, just in case you wanted to like throw some questions to me as we're doing it. I watched this movie with a widow.
Okay.
Which I've never watched a Hallmark movie with a widow before. And I was like, are we going to pick up any widow notes from this? Not knowing that it was going to involve like effectively a huge widow plot point.
Yeah. That arrives in the second act. Like just the surprising, but anyway, go ahead.
There's like the whole stench of like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
Like all over that, like from the get-go. And enough that I paused it and I was like, hey, listen, because this is somebody I've not known for a long time, just like happened to be by and was like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, actually, I got to watch this fucking movie. Do you want to have lunch? And she was like, yeah, I could watch the movie too if you want. And I was like, all right, great. I'll take some notes. But as it's coming through, I'm like, let me explain something. Like I didn't do this on purpose. But like one out of every four of these features a widow.
Yep. So if those odds seem too high for you to bear with this experience, so how did she handle it?
She was actually like really pissed at a couple points, and not in that like speaking as a widow kind of way, like, but just sort of like this is not like if you cared and you looked this stuff up at all, you wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah,
but we can get into that.
It's also true of the film's approach to how one gets evicted.
So I was not able to sit down with a landlord. So
I'm pretty sure it doesn't involve receiving an email necessarily. Like it doesn't, most of your eviction notices don't have sincerely comma on them,
right.
But I don't have a very limited experience with it, thankfully. But yeah,
there's not like a click to download all images button. And then that turns out that has the stamp from the notary public to let you know that this is an official email.
Not usually something that arrives via PDF. But anyway, that's not the most implausible thing in the film. There's a lot of implausible things in the film.
So before we get into it a little more, did you like it? I mean, I just kind of want to get a sense of like, where are you attitudinally about this movie? I mean, I can confess mine first if that makes it easier for you.
Go ahead.
I thought it was fine, like so fine that as I was going through and trying to tighten up my notes and figure out exactly what take I wanted, I noticed that for like multiple of the segments, I'm just like, yeah, it's fine.
Yep. Same for me. So the film, did we say what it's called?
We did not.
The film's called "'Twas the Date Before Christmas."
From this year.
It has our favorite Hallmark hunk, Robert Buckley, in it. And Amy Groening, who was the star of the Santa Summit, which is the movie we discussed in the podcast we recorded before this, but this might come out before that podcast does.
It could. I mean, we don't know what's going up. She was also
no one
in
knows.
Pumpkin Everything, which is episode 122, A Pumpkin for Clendathu. Which
is she the lead in that?
I think so. I didn't.
Wow.
I just assumed. I didn't go back and check. But like, if you want to If you want to watch a better Hallmark movie that is just going to make you really sad, there you go.
Yep. So this one, I agree that this was like basically dead center, fine, normal, new average Hallmark. And it is a reminder, I think, of like how much higher the floor is on balance than it used to be. Like there's a couple of little amusing bits. There's, some nice performances or whatever. But it is like fundamentally one of those like shot on 3 sets in 6 hours Hallmark movie that like, I think a few years ago would have been more ramshackle and insane, and now has kind of the comforting, sort of experience of like eating at a Chili's 2 in an airport, Don't go in with unreasonable expectations, but yeah.
They're $15, but goddamn, sometimes those Southwest egg rolls, right? They just hit that spot.
Yep. And they're going to taste the same no matter what airport you're in, whether that airport is in Winnipeg, Ottawa, Toronto, Halifax,
Quebec, Edmonton, Calgary.
Yep. All the greats. But yes, it is. It's funny. Like, I think that maybe we're a little out of practice. We had been just sort of not seeing as many of these movies, and we're going to be watching another one soon. We've got other stuff coming, but I was worried that I had like sort of lost my touch for how to watch a Hallmark movie, because it was everything that was happening early on, the sort of like collision of tropes and twinkles, and I guess you have to call them stakes for lack of a less dramatic sounding word in the storytelling. Everything that was there, I was just kind of like nodding, like, yes, right, that's exactly where it's supposed to be. And yet I wasn't feeling the normal kind of like warm familiarity, sort of like the feeling of falling asleep that I sometimes get from like Hallmark movies. And I think it's just that it's replacement level is replacement level. Like there just isn't that much to hold on to,
Yeah, no. So when you said that you thought it was sort of an indication of how much the basement has been elevated over the course of, or the duration of our watching these, like at multiple points, I hit pause and I leaned over and I was like, now what's about to happen?
Yeah.
Right. And like, case in point,
that's
like
Chappie.
Like they have a snowball fight. And I was like, now what's probably going to happen here is at some point, they're going to wind up physically tussling or chasing each other. They're going to fall down and they're going to roll all over the ground, like all over each other on the ground. And there's going to be a lot of incidental contact that we could interpret as sexually arousing. And they're going to freeze and look at each other. And then you're maybe going to get a kiss fake out. But what it is it's going to be the most erotic thing that you see. And then none of that happened.
Yeah.
And in fact, they played with basically like the way they would always do this format. They subverted that nicely, but it wasn't ostentatious and it wasn't whack. It was just like, that's fine.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, mostly the impression that I had was that it was rushed. It wasn't that it was bad. It was just the sort of thing that, and I think we've definitely seen some of these in the past where conceptually they're way more psychotic. And then in terms of how they're executed, it's like the thing that you said, like, what did you slip on? How did you fall down? You're grown. Like, we don't fall down that much when we're in our 30s,
right?
Outside of a gazebo. Yeah. But in this case, it's like, conceptually, this is, pretty deranged. It's happening in the context of a family Christmas competition. But there's just enough awareness of it now. I guess this is something that happens once you've made 50,000 of the same movie, that like the people that are writing it has that kind of like second generation of like The Simpsons, where the people that are writing for The Simpsons also grew up watching The Simpsons. Like in this case, our writer, this is like, she's written more for Canadian television and, like done much more of that than she's written Hallmark movies. But she's clearly like up to speed on what happens in a Hallmark movie. And there's a lot of like little bits of kidding it in there that I didn't object to, but they were for sure in there.
Yeah. So like this self-awareness isn't, I think, there isn't the winking like, so we're about to do this, huh? But it is kind of like if the AI, after receiving the prompt, said, no, I'm just an AI.
Yeah.
But, and then proceeded to, that what it is producing for you is an incestuous product of multiple other versions of it.
Yeah.
And so it's going to come out with like, well, there's an extra finger. That's neat.
Everybody has so many teeth.
Yeah, but it's otherwise fine. I mean, it can still grip everything. you know? And you should see it play piano.
I was going to say, it's got it has its strong suits and its weak suits. Like, there's an extra leg, but that, even when the family three-legged race, that is a huge advantage.
Yeah. No, this is the Gattaca of Hallmark.
Finally, we've been waiting. I only make references to like 3 movies. Gattaca is one of the ones I could do. And I'm really glad that you finally opened that door.
I gotta say, like, I feel like I probably hit the Gattaca button like 2 or 3 times by now, because like I don't know why I really like comparing shit to Gattaca.
Hey, who wouldn't like comparing shit to Gattaca? It's a vision of the future that has got a lot of suits. And it has Uma Thurman in it. That's fine. At this point, especially given, the present and the immediate future that we're staring down, I'm like, hell yeah. Does every house have one of those things that Jude Law burns himself up in it? I'm just asking.
Right. Yeah. Is my boss, Gore Vidal, is he just going to come tap my desk a little bit and walk off? I'll tell you what, though. I'm going to go rub all my extra skin off over the break, but let's come back and do the plot.
Super. That'll be great. I'll bring my glasses, but hide them.
As we said before the break, we watched "'Twas the Date Before Christmas" from this year, 2024, which I don't know if it's part of the official Countdown to Christmas countdown.
We don't know if they're counting it down in this case.
We cannot confirm or disconfirm that at this time.
When do they begin counting them down? We should know this.
I thought that they counted them like it was like Thanksgiving night. And then,
it's like as soon as the World Series ends. But anyway.
Okay, we have to do the plot, but before we do the plot, we're going to have to do the cast rundown. So our lead is played by Amy Groening, who, as Dave mentioned, we saw in the Santa Summit, the preceding episode, also Pumpkin Everything, and also My One and Only, aka episode 68, The Matrix, But for Marriage. She plays Jessie. Robert Buckley, who we saw in Love and Store, aka number 83, but wait, there's Buckley, and The Christmas House, aka 98, Buckley's big naturals, but not in excess. He plays Bryan. Daryl Hines plays Keegan, Bryan's buddy and coworker. Neetu Thakur plays Terry, also Bryan's buddy. Sean Cullen plays Marcus, Jessie's stepdad. Karen Waddell is Laura, Jessie's mom. Christopher Jacot is Andrew, Jessie's older brother. Mimi Kuzik, a.k.a. Detective Patsy Mayo on Hill Street Blues.
That's right.
Plays Aunt Lily, the demented MC of Christmas Olympics, who is dating the rideshare driver. And Patrice Goodman plays Shelley, Jessie's bestie. And Levy Wright and Ava Arindel play Evan and Haley, her son and daughter, respectively. So that is who's in it. Now we need to do the plot. And that is the expositional challenge. David, I think it's your turn. So tough. You have a minute to get the plot out. If you get to 69 seconds, that technically counts. But if you go over that or the grace period, you're going to get the Price is Right horn. So you're fighting here for the club horn, as you know.
Yeah. Well, luckily, that really motivates me.
I mean, who wouldn't be affected?
All right, we'll get started. Jessie is out there dating unhappily around Christmas time. She's very busy at work doing fiber optic stuff, but she's just been a little hesitant to get herself back into romance after a trauma that is hinted at and later revealed to be the death of her previous husband, Sean. Her friend, and it turns out sister-in-law, Shelley, encourages her to, do her best. She winds up matching with Andrew on an app. Oh, sorry, hang on. She winds up matching with Bryan on an app, and they wind up taking oh my gosh. I'm out of practice. She takes him as a blind date on their first date to her family's Christmas spectacular. She has told them that he's her boyfriend because she doesn't want the spectacular to not go off. He does very well. They wind up kind of falling for each other, but it becomes clear during that Bryan, a real estate developer, is evicting Shelley's candle place. Can they survive these lies? Yes.
I wish you could have felt like confident in pausing for another 1 or 2 seconds.
I was worried. This horn means a lot to me.
It was 58 seconds. Very well done. Oof. But yes.
I did leave some stuff out. You want me to retake it?
Absolutely not. As all listeners know, the horn is final.
All right, well.
I don't think you left a lot on the table. The deal with Bryan is that he runs a company that his father founded, and he wants to live up to his father's example, which is very much, being a guy in a suit, and he doesn't know if he can break from tradition. And Mom had told Jessie, like, we're going to break from tradition and not do the big family celebration. That's what kind of freaks Jessie out, is she doesn't want to lose that tradition. That's the tradition thematic narrative intention there with the two of them. I really don't even think there's that many details. I mean, it's...
Yeah, the stuff that I left out is basically like the family Christmas thing is an organized Olympic-style series of competitions that Bryan competes in, sometimes alongside Jessie, sometimes against her. He does very well, and that sort of heightens the stakes. But had I used my words effectively during the first 30 seconds, had I remembered how to speak English, I probably would have been able to get some of that in there, but I don't know that it's necessarily... I mean, it's like the bulk of the film, but it's not important.
It really isn't. I mean, I think everything important that happens once we've established what's going to happen in terms of the stakes and also the structure of this Chamberlain Christmas spectacular or whatever it is, everything that actually matters that happens is the glances between Buckley and Groening, whether they sell it, and they do. I was watching with my buddy, and she was like, that's really cute. That's really charming. I want them to kiss now. And I'm like, oh, no, they're not going to do that. I'm really sorry.
You have no idea. You're like an hour early. Okay.
First of all, do you see a gazebo? No. All right. Just wait. Sit down.
You have no idea how fucking ignorant you sound right now.
Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ.
So my wife did not watch very much of it with me, but she did see some of it. And she was just sort of sitting on the couch doing work while I was watching it. And she heard Amy Groening talk and looked up at one point, and she's like, oh, she's a Karpluk. And she is. She's an Aaron Karpluk, from the Aaron Karpluk school of Hallmark starlets, which I think is one of our favorites.
Yeah, but I think we've only done one movie of hers, and that was the Mrs. Miracle, which is, I think, way back in episode 7.
Yeah, that movie's from probably 10 years ago, too, at this point.
More than that, when we did the episode, it was probably 6 years ago. So I think the movie is from 16 years ago.
Wow.
It was old when we did it. It was already from a different era of Hallmark.
Yeah. Mrs. Miracle was from 2009.
Jesus.
My God, were we ever so young?
I know.
But yes, Groening does sell it. Buckley, as we've discussed in the past, just absolutely built for this. A charming presence, smirky without being smug, has a way of elevating mediocre material.
His characters are always good at representing that they are aware of what's happening to them, but not that they're aware that they're in a movie.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not hitting the so that happened. He doesn't do that. And he has also not had the problem that, as we've discussed, that some other actors who take themselves more seriously do, where he's trying to seem really sad or haunted. He knows what he's supposed to be doing out there. And he does.
You need in this plot, because fundamentally the idea of I'm going to meet a blind date on Bumble and I'm going to take them to my family home to meet all the people I care about and just hope it works out. That's fundamentally whacked. And, because we live in reality, fundamentally, potentially very dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just sort of he's got that grin that says well, I know what I'm doing is kind of stupid, but it's also kind of fun. And
yeah,
I'm going to see where this goes. And if, at any point, you say now is the time for judgment or the reckoning or the cleansing or whatever, I'm going to run.
Yeah, this is the other thing that kind of hangs over it. And I won't get ahead of our segment stuff. But all of the other comps that I have, it's it's ready or not. Yeah. It's a stranger is brought into a family's house and encouraged to partake in their rituals. And sometimes almost everyone dies. And that's
Okay, though, but you are getting ahead of it because you're talking about real movies and maybe better fare. So let's just go ahead and dive in here and do our segments, which help to distinguish these things. Although this one, I think, with the menace, the ready or not comp is probably going to stand out in the imagination. We'll do it anyway. Our first one is Spot the Angel. We watch until the first ad break and see if anybody is supernaturally kind in a religious way, supernaturally kind in a secular Santa way, or if there's none. And I don't think there's anybody.
Yeah, there isn't. When Kate was watching with me, she was struck by Mimi Cusick's presence, which is extremely dramatic. I mean, she's basically, it's like if Cruella de Vil was a real person, not in a scary way, just in terms of how she's styled.
Yes.
But she looked at it and she was like, is she the angel? And I was like, no, it's like kind of more of a like trickster demon elder relative thing like that. There isn't an angel in it.
I would say that her characterization is very much like when Oprah tells you that there's something under your seat, but crossed with somebody hosting the Hunger Games.
Yes. Yeah. And the styling is kind of Hunger Gamesian as well, that there's a lot of just like bits of business, a lot of doodads, scarves, makeup, hairstyling.
Yeah.
So yes, it is kind of if you could have a cartoon character in a film where everybody else is live action, as the popular online gag is, like she's close to that.
Yeah. I did think for a second maybe the mom would be a contender because there's a bit where she susses out what's going on. Like she is helpfully incredibly stupid when she asks them about like, well, how did you two meet? And they're ad-libbing their way so baldly that you would have had to have had like maybe just be on a lot of Xanax not to notice.
Yeah.
And she doesn't notice. Like you're kind of wondering like maybe is she just being like, well, okay, being mom, or just sort of letting Jessie kind of hang herself for a bit before she swoops in. And then, you know, when she does sort of twig to it, she's very understanding and she says like, hey, I've noticed the way you two look at each other. Maybe you should go ahead and give it a shot. But like it never crosses over into the supernatural. She's there at the important moments.
Yeah.
But everything else is organically proceeding toward them anyway, that like she's not nudging anything anywhere.
Yeah. And if that's the definition I think that we use for Angel, which is like secret author of reality, like the Danny Glover character in the Christmas Train, where it's like basically revealed that is God at the end of the movie. There is none of that in this.
And those are still
my
beliefs.
There is no God here.
When I go to church this Christmas, when I hit my knees, I'm picturing Danny Glover still. Things haven't changed for me.
I respect that. There's nothing in here that's going to change that vision of the universe and how it is ordered.
So this next one, David, is I think one that we both really enjoy. And I also feel like this one, the cupboards are a little bare on too. It's Eat Your Heart Out. And that's where the foods, are they just too Hallmark, a little whack, maybe a little too large? Did they underline anything in the themes of the movie, or were they just abundant? And here, I don't think they were abundant. And I think that they were, again, fine.
Yeah. There's nothing that's like, usually the way that this pops for me is less when sometimes you'll see something and it's baffling. Like that, there's a couple of, an entire chicken and surrounded by on a mound of French fries, like just as a great warrior might stand atop a pile of skulls. Like you see things that are frightening sometimes in these. And then oftentimes though, it's just somebody saying something that doesn't make sense. Like the waiter proudly announcing the lobster taleggio has arrived at the table or whatever. And in this case, they make a big deal out of Marcus being a gourmet chef and very fussy about cooking.
If I may, I would love to play that clip before we go into it, because they're playing it up, but this was an extremely satisfying part of the movie and people should enjoy it.
Completely agree.
There are some rules. You may use the convection oven, but only the convection oven. This is a no passage zone. My flans, which are in the oven, the flans are very delicate, and I don't want them disturbed. They're like children sleeping in a bunk bed at camp. Do you want to scare them? Don't. Do not approach any of those appliances. The toaster has been unplugged. You may not use it. What's that, Mr. Horsey? No, they don't need to go in there, do they?
Time's a wasting, Marcus.
Like they think of the flans as sleeping children. Sir, I won't. That's fair. I'm going to eat that later. But yes, he does all that stuff. And yet, like, the things that he's describing are good. They're things that a fussy chef might make. And then the food, when you see it on the table, I wouldn't say that it looks good or bad. It seems almost as if it's been, like, sort of obscured in the way that if you're on a Zoom call, there's like an option to kind of blur the background behind you.
Right.
There's a sense of, so I kept looking, I was like pausing and doing forensic analysis on my TV, which, you know, not to brag, is TV sized, and being like, let me see those fucking carrots. How messed up are those? And as far as I could tell, they were fine, but they were somehow never in focus enough for me to really make an assessment.
Yeah, they were really doing the Peter Jackson close-up focus at the end of Return of the King on everybody's face in that big dining, like that kind of Christmas banquet scene. Yeah. So yeah, I was like, what, is that breaded? That's like a breaded meat, right? One of them looked like, honestly, like somebody had deep fried ribs, but I was like, that can't be right.
I know. Yeah. You know what? Like the thing I have in my notes is like that photo of, it's like an early AI generated thing where they're like, try to identify any one object in this picture. And everything is just like really insane and unresolved. It like looks like kind of a cluttered desktop, but then like the more you look at it, you're like, that's not a pen at all. Like that's possibly a bird. And that's sort of how I felt looking at the food here. Like things were more or less the right color, but I couldn't tell what was going on. And yeah, if it turns out that like, if you were on set and like it's in the script that these are like ribs Milanese or something like that, like that would be bad, but I can't prove they did it. And I don't want to go out there and start comparing this to, you know, movies where they've really done perverse stuff.
Mommy, if we don't have chicken fried ribs, Santa won't come.
Leaving a huge bucket of dinner rolls under the chimney for Santa when he arrives. He loves it. It's so soft and spongy and yielding.
There were only two things that I saw in this that qualified for like the stuff that we're used to when you watch it and you're just like, what? One was just an exchange of dialogue. It's when Bryan first meets the family and they're welcoming in, and Marcus says,
Oh, thank you.
Does anybody want some coffee?
Make it a double.
Oh, okay.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's funny.
It's confusing.
It's not really about the coffee. This isn't really a food point. I guess I wanted to shoehorn in the fact that like there's at least one moment that I think you want in all Hallmark movies where everybody sounds like they're in a cult.
Yes. And I think that's, again, maybe that's like fan service now, because I think the way that we've like continually underlined that this is like pretty well crafted, pretty familiar Hallmarky fare. Like, I know that we always joke about like a producer showing up on set and being like, I don't see any fucking gazebos. What do you think these people are here for? You know, and like just making all the tropey stuff happen. But the idea of getting script notes where they're just like, nothing uncanny happens in this. Like, I need somebody to just, like, eat the most normal food in the world and then make an O face because of how good it is. Like, we need some of that Hallmark shit. And certainly the idea of everybody pretending that there's such a thing as a double coffee is right in that particular wheelhouse.
Right. But the fact that, like, there's a whole bunch of forced laughter, I think would flow toward your idea of it having a lot of ready or not themes, because that's sort of your first indication that, like, everybody here thinks something is funny. Do I know what's funny?
Yes.
Am I the thing that's funny? Is what's going to happen to me later the thing that's funny?
Yeah, a bunch of strange people laughing at the wrong time, asking me if I, quote, want to play a game, unquote. Like, that usually goes one way, you know?
Yeah. And then the only actual legitimately disturbing food bit was when they first meet up, she has gotten him a cup of coffee. And she says,
So I guess a splash of skim milk, dash of sugar?
No. No. Like, first of all, I don't know how anybody makes a sugar decision for anybody else in this day and age. Like, because every other person I know now has diabetes.
Yeah. Or just has like a baby's palate.
Yeah.
Where they're like, I don't actually put sugar in my coffee. I just dissolve an entire Baby Ruth bar in it.
Or, listen, if you're going to sweeten my coffee for me, it has to be sugar extracted from a coconut somehow.
Yep.
But then also the splash of skim milk. Like, thanks. Why didn't you just put a tablespoon of water in there?
Yep.
Like, what the fuck is that going to do? Like, if I've got like an upset stomach and I can't take the acid from coffee, I'm going to need some half and half. If I want it to taste like something else and cool it down, then I'll use some like regular milk. But if it's a splash of skim milk, I'm sorry, you are like 8 ounces short of where skim milk can do a fucking thing to coffee.
Yeah. You're basically just lowering the temperature that way, I guess.
Yeah. Or like, hey, did your coffee not look gray enough? Hang on.
I was going to say, do you take your coffee black or kind of like a off brown?
Do you like pencil colors?
Didn't mean to interrupt you while you were going off on your Dennis Leary coffee rant there.
Hey, listen, I mean, I didn't want to get sorry.
Jeb's webcam turned on. We usually record these without it, and he was suddenly wearing a smooth leather jacket and pacing across his room.
I was gesticulating with a cigarette, and I was about to complain about how they don't let you smoke anywhere anymore.
Yeah, it's terrible. I hope Dennis Leary's well. I feel like he kind of, that character that he was playing there, he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
And I hope that he is enjoying living in that world.
I don't know if he got what he wanted, because what would he have left to complain about? I'm just kidding. He has a ton left to complain about.
That's so true. Yeah. Litter boxes in schools and stuff. Anyway, let's get on to the next segment.
Sure. The Hallmark Expanded Universe. And that's other Hallmark movies or characters that could wander into this one, or that the people in this one could find themselves in. If you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you might remember some of these characters. If you haven't, I'm very sorry. Please be patient. David, what did you have?
So the thing that I returned to, I mean, there's a lot of sort of like familiar Hallmarky tropiness going on. Like most of this happens within that one family. The thing I was thinking about was Warm Heart Candles, which is Shelley's business, and being evicted by Bryan. And the idea of all Hallmark retail places conceivably existing on the same stretch or in the same building, that like one developer could evict every Hallmark store that we've ever seen. The fudge stores, the like Christmas bauble ones,
Cartwrights.
The diner with the sign that says fries in it in neon. They're all effectively on the same street. And so that was the bit that I was thinking about, was more or less like how Bryan could conceivably have been the landlord in every movie that we saw.
That's a good take. This movie, especially compared to a lot of the ones we've seen recently, has a really uncanny nowhere aspect to it.
Yeah.
I was looking for any clue as to where they could be. I mean, I know that they were in Hamilton, Ontario, but...
Yeah, that information is easy to find. You get no sense of what Hamilton, Ontario is like from watching this, though.
No. So my thought, and again, this is just me wrestling with like, where would they go? You know, and his business doesn't interact with the other titans of finance that we've seen. So my question was, where's the divorced dad? You know, Hallmark is not really that comfortable with like, oh yeah, no, we divorced the hell out of each other and we're happier now. But we have that with Jesse's mom. And my read, or at least the way I would like to see it explored, or explained, I should say, is that, you know, we've had a lot of widowers in Hallmark, and I figure one of them just has to have been lying.
Yep.
He just didn't want to account for the fact that, like, yeah, before he was 40, he was kind of a piece of shit, and he had to do some growing up. But you know what? He doesn't want to account for that, because he doesn't want you calling anybody and finding out just how bad he was at being a person.
Yeah, he wants you to believe that people can change. Even those of us who, you know, hair used to be slicked back, sloppy steaks, the whole thing. Now you moved on. I think that's actually the idea of there being, because we've had a couple of these where there's like mixed family type stuff, or like, I remember there's one with Amy Acker and Christian Brune that had like the first successfully amicable divorce depicted in Hallmark history. We were over the moon about that movie, which I remember being perfectly charming, but it was the sort of thing where it was like, oh my God, like a fucking real life thing is in a Hallmark movie and they're being normal about it.
Yeah. The episode, I don't know the number, is Incheon landing on the war on Christmas.
Yep.
Because I don't know how the Korean conflict wound up in there. But
yeah, me either.
You know, it's going to happen a lot.
Yeah.
Big Dougie Mac, you know, 10 tactical nukes. It's going to solve everything.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess we'd be kind of insulting our listeners if we deigned to explain to them how the Korean War became a part of our recap of a 68-minute Christmas movie.
Old Santa's never died, Dave. Right, so it's overdetermined, and that's the part of the movie where you already knew what the rhetorical stakes were, what the thematic stakes were, what each character probably was going to have to do, but Hallmark was still like, are you paying attention? It's about to happen, and here's what it means. Again, I'm not sure we had a contender, but your mileage may differ. How do you feel about it?
No, I didn't have any either. I think it's like, this is what's weird about it, is that they don't overdo a lot of the, there's like sort of a Hallmark quit. There's like a lot of the stuff that you're kind of familiar with. And yet none of it gets like underlined, like not even too much, but like really very much at all. Like it's sort of, it feels like at this point, kind of a mature property. And the writers and directors and actors all sort of know what they're doing. And so they don't need to really like lampshade shit the way that, or at least in this particular movie, they don't seem to evince the need to lampshade stuff like that.
Right. Like there was a bit around 42 minutes in where they're walking, they've left the family, they're on their own. They've gone to go buy some popsicle sticks to repair a Christmas ornament. And Jesse's like, so what is it that is a psychological obstacle to you for getting better about the things you need to change? And I was like, oh, here we go. Like I paused it and I explained the trauma swap and everything. And then we only got one side of it. It was quick. It was reasonable. She posited a few things. And then we got the other half 15 minutes from the end.
Yeah.
Again, also where it would organically occur to you if you were maintaining a conversation with somebody and you didn't feel like you had to get everything out at once. Like if you start the conversation here, you have to have the total parts of that conversation, the total breadth of that conversation has to happen now, and then you move on and it will never be addressed again, except where you say that like, by the way, I triumphed over that. Thank you. And then you kiss, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it did feel kind of like, oh, it's a deconstructed Hallmark movie. Interesting.
Yes.
It's an open-faced Hallmark.
I was going to say, yeah, it's a play on a Hallmark movie. Hallmark three ways. But it is, it does have that sort of feeling to it. And I would say I appreciated it for the most part. Like, again, maybe just because we're sort of only now beginning to get our feet wet back on, watching these movies on a more regular cadence. It was nice to sort of get in there and just have everybody be like, we're all adults here. This is a Hallmark movie. You know what you're here for.
Also, I'm going to just sort of disagree with the, like, we have to get our feet wet again. Because like going back to one of the metaphors you've used in multiple episodes now, that brain stayed damaged.
Oh, yeah.
Know?
No, I know. I mean, it's not like I forgot how to do it, right? It's kind of like, every movie that I see, I expect every other movie to be like that. So I saw Conclave in the theaters last weekend, and I was outraged that there was so little intra-bishopric intrigue in this one. Very little. There's almost no Catholic cardinals in it. Only one. And I think I imagined that.
These are the best communion wafers you'll ever have.
Oh, so good.
Is that
what
cinnamon?
Is your recipe for the body of Christ?
Okay, as for deconstructed Hallmark, let's try crossover. And that's better or more entertaining mainstream fare that characters or events or themes from this could wind up in. Basically, did you put this in a real movie like, say, Ready or Not, Dave?
Yeah. Well, I guess I did sort of give this away a little bit within the first 90 seconds or so of the episode. But my first thought was absolutely Ready or Not. Not just because Ready or Not 2 is extremely Canadian as a production and in terms of its cast, but the idea of being like bringing someone back to meet your weird family at the house where most of the movie is going to happen. Like Ready or Not is just the most recent example of that. But that is like one of the types of horror movie. Like if you had to break it down, that there's like whatever 5 or 6 different kinds, like that's one of the ones that doesn't involve like someone who wears a mask and can't be killed.
Right. The idea of the inner sanctum, the family home being violated, you've got Night of the Living Gingerbread or The Last Gingerbread House on the Left or any of that stuff. I'm glad that you had that idea. Mine was, I felt especially weak. I just really want to take all these newly formed relationships born of a fake boyfriend or fake girlfriend and put them on like some kind of reality show like Isthmus of Adultery or whatever and see if their fake relationship is really built to last. Just sort of like shake them up like an ant colony and watch them.
See if they'll fight.
Yeah, like just see if they hug or, you know, like, oh my God, she's put cinnamon on the body of Christ and she's bringing it to him now.
Yeah, it is like the idea too of this being a blind date where there's just a lot of challenges, like physical challenges, like as in, I'm not saying exactly like Double Dare. There's no slime in this movie. If that's a problem for you, then you shouldn't watch it.
Yeah. Save that for NFL broadcasts.
But there is like a sense of that idea of it having a competitive reality sort of element to it. Like there's like quick fires and then, the main challenge of every Top Chef episode. It's strange to think of like what Hallmark owes to Bravo in that regard, but there is some element of that.
So now we come to an infrequent one, great moments in Moppetry. Now, we had a couple kids in this, and we're going to score how they did Moppet-wise on a scale of 1 to 5 precocious girls on the cover of the DVD box for Curly Sue. I felt they were completely in pocket for this movie, except for one part that just annoyed the shit out of me. How did you feel, Dave?
I thought the kids were well cast and decently well performed. The stuff that was sort of like a brick to me was that they were supposed to be like brother and sister kind of squabbling with each other and constantly like sort of rivalrous. At one point, Evan boos Haley when she wins a challenge. I don't know. Nobody's heart was really in that. It's probably better than them just like being all gooey marshmallow peep style interaction, just dramatically. For the most part, though, I thought the kids did a good job.
Yeah, I thought it was well acted. I thought that they didn't have really great writing to play with, but I did appreciate that there was some antagonism there. And when they did do the like, I'm going to defeat my sister, I was like, yeah, you'd hear that. That's normal.
Yeah.
Toward the end, though, the revelation that Bryan is the developer who is foreclosing on their mom Jessie's place, they don't get upset about that, despite the fact that maybe they're not going to be able to afford to live where they live anymore.
Yeah.
Because their mom is no longer going to have a business. And instead of like any actual anxiety about that, because they're old enough to get what's going on, instead we get this exchange.
This is a hot mess. And I'm going to go so wild.
I don't really even know what that second line is, and I'm not looking at Urban Dictionary to figure it out.
Yeah, it's confusing.
It's like when your 10-year-old comes home and starts describing somebody as so Sigma, and you just want to slap the Andrew Tate out of him.
Yeah, there was, and I appreciate again that they were trying not to just have them communicate entirely like, I'm a little sad because my mommy's candle store is getting canceled or whatever. But there was also, yeah, like you don't need the idea of just sort of grafting on some middle school slang. This is a hot mess is definitely, I'd say, one of the goofier bits of writing in it, just because I think the kids are like, you're given to understand that they're smart enough to get that it's bad if your mom's business doesn't exist anymore. And so the idea of them hitting a like, so that happened after finding that out just feels kind of off.
They were so normal and fine and like pleasantly antagonistic. And then they're just sort of like, that's too savvy. If you're going to do something, just panic, will you?
Yep.
Or be like, am I going to get my PlayStation? Ask about that. That scans is real.
And if you want to have your lip quiver or whatever, man, go ahead. This is your chance. Build your reel.
Okay, Dave. So just speaking of reality and real stakes, our next two would normally be the Hallmark Voight-Kampff test and who's the real villain. The latter being, when Hallmark doesn't really understand that there are forces bigger than the plot at play that bear the responsibility for the bad things that happen, either in Hallmark or in the world in general. And then also the Voight-Kampff test is when somebody doesn't realize that they're a Christmas mandroid. And I don't think I have something for either of those. Like, this seemed to be real enough that we don't have to go, is there something expressly fake or is there something more real? It was just fine.
Yeah. Like, you could say that, like, Lily's weird for, like, presiding over the Chamberlain family Christmas Olympics with an iron hand and having made her own Wheel of Fortune style challenge picker. But, like, the film knows that she's weird. It's, like, played as a bit or whatever.
Yet she also seems to know that she's weird. Like, when she's basically saying, like, Bryan, you get back in there and finish this. This is serious. This is the most important thing you could do. There is just that well-delivered hint of like, I know that my saying this is bullshit, but just don't interrupt my thing, man.
Yeah.
Like, walk over there. It's going to be 5 more minutes for you.
There's a moment after it's finally revealed that Bryan is like the developer that is kicking Shelley out of her place. And Lily, Mimi Cusick, goes, so you're telling me a complete stranger is about to win the Chamberlain family Olympics? And Jessie, but like other people in the room too, are like, Lily, that is not germane to what we're talking about. Not now. And it's like, so you can't say that the film doesn't know that she's weird. They get it.
And then there's also like legitimate joy on her face when Jessie and Bryan kiss at the end, because she's like, oh, finally, I've got my legitimate winner back, right? Like, we're not DQing this guy. He's going back on the board.
I can take the big candy cane back from that freaking sullen tween who won by default.
I'm pulling the asterisk off Roger Maris's season. By God.
The relief on her face is similar to that of all the sports writers that realized they'd never have to vote Sammy Sosa into the Hall of Fame. And then in terms of the real villain and stuff, it's in the script. It's real estate, making it hard for people to operate due to, reasons having to do with profit margins and abstraction.
Yeah.
As aspects of the real world making their way into Hallmark movies go, like, it's just right there.
Even the real estate component, too, is like, well, why can't we do mixed-use buildings? Well, it's zoning. Zoning is a problem. Well, no shit. Yeah, that's what drives a lot of stuff up. Great, we got it done. Take care.
No need to even introduce some sort of like supernatural elf to the equation. This is just the basic blocking and tackling of living in a city.
So now it's time to rate the thing. As longtime listeners know, we have a 5-star rating system. 5 stars is a family movie that could be released in theaters in the winter, burned off in February or something. 4 stars is the juiciest taco, so named after the best food in Vancouver's wettest park. 3 stars, there are some solids. 2 stars, very soft cheese. 1 star, sugary and extremely wet. David, where did you end up?
I think we've established that this was like both unremarkable and went down perfectly easy. And I feel like in the spirit of Hallmark, that this is like what we've described is that this is exactly halfway to being good. But because it is pleasant and because I did get a couple of little chuckles and generally enjoyed the stuff around the edges, I will give it a 3, even though I think on the merits, it's probably more of a 2.5.
I felt that like just down the middle would have sold it short. I think because our rating system is still so weighted by all the movies made from like 2014 to 2018.
Yeah, where like bad ones are legit just bad to watch.
Yeah. Like if this had come out in 2018, like right when we started doing these, and we'd just done a bunch of Candy Cams and La Chabert movies, and we saw this, we would have given it a 4 at least.
Yep.
So with that in mind, I gave it a 3.5 just because like I felt like 3 is kind of my basement there. And I have to appreciate the fact that they did do the meta work without doing the really wink at it.
Yep.
And also just we had 2 really good leads that made every bit of it like, yeah, okay, I believe you when you do that. And I believe that you'd be into that person doing that. So yeah, that's what it says on the box.
I think that's fair. I would rather err high than low with these, especially when they do the sort of the basic stuff right. It does strike me that this was like a little bit cheaper seeming than the average of the Hallmark movies. I mean, not like any of them have started, you know, like blowing out the production value, Cecil B. DeMille style or whatever. But there were basically 3 sets in this entire movie.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
And then a couple of outdoor shots. And the house that they shot it at is like nice and large and like on a big lot, but also just identifiably a suburban house. Like if you're watching this because you're a fan of Ready or Not, and I keep mentioning that movie, I have to tell you, it's not a spooky seeming mansion with like secret passageways. It just looks like kind of a house with a 2-car garage.
Maybe a 3-car garage.
Could be a 3-car garage.
Because it's got a big kitchen.
That's a pretty big kitchen,
They were making the 3-car garages when they started making those kitchens.
Yeah.
So
once you see, you know, what kind of range Marcus is working with, I guess maybe 3-car garage is more realistic. It's been a minute since I've, you know, lived outside of a tiny hovel stacked above and below other hovels.
Okay, so we did it. We've come to the leftovers. That's any odd bits that didn't fit anywhere else or we forgot to put anywhere else, but basically just what we thought was fun or perverse. David, I'd like to go first with 2 quick quotes from the beginning of the movie that I enjoyed very much, which to me like kind of conveys the way that it was being written at above the levels that we began this podcast with.
Proposing at Christmas is so risky. But what if she says no? Your whole holiday is ruined. And if she does say yes, well, you already paid for a ring, but you gotta still buy her presents. When does it ever end?
And
so, do you have any holiday plans? What?
Mary Crypto was mooning, so I bought Slay Bitcoins. Now it's pumping.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Congratulations.
I have to dump it all. I have to. I'm gonna make a killing.
Yeah. So the crypto guy, this is, I believe, the debut of crypto in the Hallmark universe. Sorry.
It could be.
I'm so sorry that happened. Like that guy, there's like a procession, basically like a clown car opens up and nothing but wine clowns gets out of it.
Yes.
At the beginning of it, all of the bad dates.
Yes.
There's a guy who tries to pocket a like gaming controller from a like children's toy giveaway, and Jesse gets in his ass for that. There is the crypto guy. But Crypto's debut in this, definitely worth tipping your cap to. Certainly also a credit to them using it as it is understood in real life as the universal sign of do not fuck.
Yes.
Just mashing that button. But so the other big debut in this, because I feel like, Crypto kind of sorrowfully. And then I believe that this is the first time Robert Buckley, when he's paired with Evan, the young nephew, for the baking contest, which, spoiler alert, they do wind up winning. Buckley hits a straight up like, let's go, like there's, like the Twitch style, like members of the Let's Go community, like that's how they say it.
Right.
And I believe that is the debut of Let's Go as a thing people say in the Hallmark universe as well. And not a moment too soon.
Yeah, very deftly done.
IMDb wise, usual stuff. We're familiar with a lot of these actors. As you mentioned, Mimi Cusick having been in Hill Street Blues, that rocks. Very pleased that she's made her way into this. I mean, she's a Canadian actor. Like, would be surprising if she didn't eventually find her way into these. And Amy Groening and Robert Buckley, we've talked about. The woman that wrote it, Ramona Barkert, was a longtime Degrassi The Next Generation thing. This is her first Hallmark movie. The director is the guy that I'm excited about. Bradley Walsh, who's a guy that's, directed a lot of Hallmark movies. He's just like kind of a working Canadian director guy. We've probably seen some of his movies. I'm looking through it now, and it's like nothing that is exactly jumping out to me, but like it would be surprising if we hadn't at some point. But under a different name, an early directorial credit, 1999. Jeb, do you remember what you were doing?
I was probably drunk.
Yeah, but were you watching MTV?
No, I was in college and we didn't have cable.
Okay.
So yeah, I was busy being drunk. Tell me, what was MTV like in 1999?
Oh, it was amazing.
Did MTV have raps still?
MTV did have raps. There was still 120 minutes. Matt Pinfield, America's sweetheart, he was everywhere you looked.
Very
and
nice.
It seemed like it would go on forever. I remember one time seeing a Pulp video on MTV. Can you believe it?
Wowzers. Really?
Yeah. Late at night, for 120 minutes. But the video for This Is Hardcore, which is very amusingly overstated, features some of
yes.
Jarvis has never been more louche than he is in anyway, if you're watching more on like the countdown dayside thing, though, it was all popular songs. A Canadian act, one hit wonder, riding around scooters, concerned that somebody was going to steal their sunshine. Bradley Walsh, under the credit B Rad, directed the video for Len's Steal My Sunshine. I would love to say that he brings some of the same energy to this. He does not, which is for the best. Because the guys, like everyone in Len seemed like super chill, but like chill in the way that like the guys in Sublime seemed chill. Like they also wanted to get in a fight that night. They were just like wearing undershirts and sunglasses before that happened. But Steal My Sunshine video, pretty iconic, but also is a very much a like riding around town thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas, as we've established, this is basically trapped in a house with people who will possibly consume your body at the end of the evening or not.
Yeah.
But it's impressive that he can do both.
I do love to see people grow.
Yeah.
And that's what our main characters did. And that's what our director did. So that's very thoughtful.
Yeah. We have seen a Bradley Walsh movie. I looked deeper. I had to do the like show more. He directed Christmas in Angel Falls.
Oh my goodness.
So that goes a long way back. That's 2017. We watched this Rachel Boston classic, and that is a very much like that period Hallmark movie. Like Beau Bridges literally plays an angel. Like literally it makes a harp sound when he dematerializes his work done at the end of the film. So he's come a long way.
Yes, it's also, I think, the most explicitly Marxist of all the Hallmark movies we've seen.
Yeah, that is definitely that is a movie that is basically about underdevelopment and like executive fuckery, and then also like has a cute angel in it also.
So I did not have a lot, just a couple notes that I enjoyed. She's wearing a shirt that says Mary when they're doing the their Bumble text exchange. And it was just sort of like, yep, there's some stuff you're never going to get rid of. And then also at the very end, another thing they'll never get rid of. We have Bryan and Jessie kissing and the whole family comes out and is like, hey, you guys making out?
Is that cool?
wanted to have like the Letterman delivery on it. Like, hey, What you guys doing?
You want to buy a monkey?
Hey, kids.
It was very much like you could sort of, the way that the shot was framed too, and I don't want to give B-Rad too much credit on this because there's only so many ways you can shoot it. But in the foreground, you see Buckley and Groening kind of nuzzling and getting ready to kiss. And then just like in the background, you become aware that this space on the porch that had been empty is rapidly filling with people.
Right.
And then continuing to fill with people. It's just, they're all out there. Grandpa, who has like 2 lines, the rideshare driver who's in a relationship with Lily, they're all just sort of standing there, basically getting ready to clap.
And then my remaining 2 notes, one is a serious one, but we're not going to go out on that. It's widow talk. And basically eliminating traditions that were important to somebody who's just lost someone. And Jessie has lost her fiance within the last year, or maybe just over a year. Eliminating traditions are really not helpful for people who've been traumatized. They want to be able to hold on to stuff that, anchors them and makes them feel like they haven't lost every part of their world. So her family just going like, well, what if we just don't do Christmas? That kind of sucks.
Would you like it if we pulled that up by the roots? Would that help you in any way?
Yeah, we can just deracinate anything. And then getting back to like bits of nostalgia that are conveyed a little Hallmarky. When they're out having obtained the popsicles for the ornament, Bryan at one point pulls a photo out of his wallet, and it's like a 3x5 photo.
Yeah.
It's like a full fucking photo. Yep. And it's like, how big is your wallet, dude?
Yeah, I have that written down in my notes where I was like, should have been framed. It's a very large image. It is not a wallet-sized photo. Pulling out a fat head of yourself as a child and slapping it on the wall. So Jessie's day job, do you remember what it is?
She works in fiber optics. She's a fiber optic marketer.
Yes. Confusing.
Yes.
And I want to give it also to the credit of the film, completely played for laughs. Like they have that in there. Every time fiber optics is mentioned, people are just like, I don't know anything about that. That is Jessie's business. And I don't concern myself with it, which is good. I think that's like, if you're going to mention crypto, use it the right way. If you're going to mention fiber optics, don't explain it.
Yeah. Perfect. No notes.
Super.
Okay, Dave, that's it. We did it. The first one under 60 minutes.
That's right.
Boom!
Is this because I'm a lesbian?
Hey,
McCloud.
We got it just under the wire, but we did it, baby.
We did it, Joe. No, too soon for that. Sorry.
Oh, all right. Merry Christmas. Let's leave.
Merry Christmas to you. Bye.
This episode of the Holiday Hunger Games was executive produced by Mac Mashburn, Big Joe D, and all our friends down at the Jasper Group, LLC, and by you, the patron donor, in conjunction with Vigorous Marvin. Vigorous Marvin, we don't know you, but we let you see where we sleep. Special thanks today to Drew Fairweather, a.k.a. Crudbump, for our theme music, and to Chris Collingwood of Look Park and Fountains of Wayne for all the rest, except where specified in the show notes. Like, subscribe, rate, and review us. It helps people find the show. Gotta do it. And follow us on Facebook and Blue Sky at It's Christmastown. For over 80 hours of bonus material, including Fever Dream, our public health breakdown, and a day's worth of Hallmark podcasts, plunk down 10 cents per day at patreon.com/thisweekinatrocity. Thanks for listening. Merry Christmas, and talk to you soon.
It's not Hallmark Hall of Fame. It's not Hall of Fame. It's not that high quality. There's a Hall of Very Good. If there's a Hallmark Hall of Very Good, sure.
Fucking thing sucks!